is that too?
I've done most of the drafting.
For the film commission?
No, not for the film commission.
That's the same thing.
Yeah, no, that would be.
Right, that's what I'm saying. When David comes back.
I just have one draft used for every film.
No,
I'm gonna call this the film commission bill. Sorry, okay, we're live. Welcome back, everybody. Sorry for the delay. A lot of moving parts here today. So I was hoping to return and finish up on the film commission, but we'll move on to other things. Let's move at this point to Cassie. Is she with us?
Okay. Sorry, so I'm getting Karen Middleman off the hook.
Okay.
And then what are we doing about redrafting? Just talking to
But
David.
You know, we're talking to David.
David's coming back.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know.
He's drafting an amendment right now. Okay, great. I'll get Karen off the hook.
Good morning, Cassie. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well, thank you. How is everyone there?
A little under the gun, but we're making progress. We're ticking off issues one by one.
Yeah.
We've gotten rid of the most difficult one, the film commission, so we're all set. So I got your memo, and everybody got your memo. I think I understood it. As it raised an issue to me is I'm concerned in terms of the maximum amount of the grant potentially changing so much from this program's predecessor without hearing testimony as to why. And this bill, you may not even been part of it, but this program, the Economic Recovery Grant Program, put out hundreds of millions of dollars over a few years. And then the administration came to us with a $10 million program, which they expand to $30 million to primarily help businesses that fell in the gap, that has not applied for or received any other federal or state assistance.
I'm sorry.
And then they expanded it to include businesses that were continuing to experience COVID relief, COVID problems, regardless of, even though they had received some state or federal monies. But they came to us in this extended program of which you're a successor of, with the maximum be $150,000 for 3 months of fixed expenses. We have no testimony of why that doesn't continue to work. And the version we have now is, I think, potentially much bigger and would allow for bigger grants. And so I did have, so I wanted to hear your thoughts about that, but I'm inclined to stick with the existing law on the maximums until the House or somebody else can convince us that there's a change, because those were the original proposals from the administration in terms of this program. I also wanted to understand from you the example you gave of $50,000 owner loss over 2 years. And hypothetically, I just want to be clear in my mind. If a business came to you and said, the only loss I've suffered from before and after COVID is the $50,000 I took in reduction in my salary. And I did that for 2 years running. Would they qualify for a $100,000 loan because they took a cut in their pay or $50,000 a year?
I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but I think the gist of it is there a way for a business to receive a forgivable loan that's equivalent to on a one-for-one basis what they reduced their owner's salary or owner's compensation for. Is that the question?
Yeah, assuming they didn't get any other federal or state aid,
Okay,
under the bill in front of you now.
yeah. You know, I suppose that's conceivable, but it'd be really unlikely. There's so many other variables and factors that go into these numbers in the way that we've set it up here, that if the decrease in the net operating income is exactly equal to the reduction in owner's compensation for the combined period of time, and there's no other changes whatsoever, I suppose that could happen. But again, we're talking about compensation less than $100,000. So that owner, who also has to meet bills and put food on the table, and is an employee of the business, they're part of the payroll, if you will. So I suppose that's possible. It's not likely, but I don't know why that would be a problem.
I know it's not likely that all the other expenses are going to even out and be flat over that period. But it just, in my mind, I was just trying to get to the fact that it is possible that we're giving out $50,000 to $100,000 to an individual, or struggling to do $1,000 to an employee who may have suffered from COVID as well. And that's a large amount of money for the state to be just giving a grant out to somebody to help them cover their losses or their loss in pay.
Well, keep in mind the grant, in order to get the loan forgiven, the money has to be used for eligible expenses on a going forward basis. So it would be, we would see that and say, well, if the only thing that you did was pay yourself and you didn't pay your employees, that loan probably won't be forgiven, because to get the loan in the first place, it's got to be for eligible expenses, which are operating expenses, which is, you know, more than just the owner's compensation.
Oh, but it includes the owner's compensation. My understanding is the loss in owner's compensation could be included, and then you have to show that the money you got was used to offset that loss in owner's compensation.
Right, owner's compensation is an eligible expense, but if it's the only expense going forward, I just don't see that as a scenario that's going to come into play.
Anyhow, so my suggestion is we leave the restrictions that are in the law as you've written them in place, but we add also the limitations. We lower the limitations from 250 to 150, and we limit it to 3 months of fixed expenses. That's the way the program was. We heard loud and clear that the net tax loss was a big problem in this program, being that we've gotten rid of that. And but I don't think we've heard enough evidence at this point to change other parameters of the program. We haven't heard any problems with those, and in fact, there was the ones that were suggested to us by the administration as a way to structure, as Senator Clarkson says, the guardrails around the program, at least the statutory guardrails, so that it targets small business and it gets as many loans as possible out the door as possible. If we go to 500,000, that was suggested. It's a quite different program. We'll cut it down to 250. That makes it a little better, but at least I don't know. If we're going to put, we are online to give you all the money you want, which is $20 million. And if you divide that by, if the average grant is $50,000, then just divide 50,000 into 20 million, you get a lot more loans out the door than if you several bigger loads. So I think that's where we are. I certainly give you the opportunity to comment, but I think that's the only changes we're going to make to the section at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the rationale for sort of expanding the amounts was that, you know, there are additional guardrails in this model that it has to be the lesser of those three ways of determining the maximum. So there are those guardrails. You know, a company like the first example that is on there that, you know, it's capped out at the 250, even with that 250, you know, it's a very small percentage of what they actually lost. And so that was the thinking of expanding it. There won't be a lot, I think, that fall into that category, but there are companies out there, larger companies that did, for instance, take on significant capital investment expansion projects right before the pandemic hit. They're really suffering. But this is not Vita saying we need more money. It's an effort to try and address as many businesses out there in a meaningful way.
Thank you, Cassie.
Thank you, Cassie. There's obviously more opportunity as the bill goes forward to look at the formula for maximum grants. We would be open to hearing about, but at this point, I'm just going to stay with the status quo. Okay, I think we're done with that. Thank you, Cassie, for sticking with us through all of this. I know it hasn't been easy for any of us, but they're large dollar figures, and we're glad we could at least meet the administration on the total amount of money to put into recovery loans, forgivable, short-term forgivable loans, which I view very much as the successor to the other program, and remove the net operating tax loss, which allegedly caused the program to be undersubscribed. Okay, so we can let you go. We're going to move on. Thank you. We're going to move back to the Film Commission very quickly. Do you, Senator Brock and Senator Clarkson, want to describe what you've arrived
For
at
David.
for David, and he can try and
He's
address
here.
it?
So we changed everything. So what do I need to do?
Damn, I just moved on. Oh, yeah.
Actually, no.
So, David, we have talked to Karen Middleman. Brandy and I did, and I think our thinking is, I think we'd like to add a couple things. One is, I think we'd love to ask the Vermont Arts Council to convene this group, and it's a working group.
Working group or task force.
Yeah, whichever language we are using that Ledge Council prefers. And these are our thoughts generally, that it include that the Arts Council convenes it. They have kindly, very generously agreed to do that. That it include ACCD, 2 legislators, and
Whether or not, 2 is going to be the right number. The reason I say that is, we typically had this model that we used, such as with the lottery thing, in which you have 2 from each chamber.
no, we could do 4.
You're going to wind up having the House is going to have. It may be 2 from each chamber.
Please don't make it more than 2 from each chamber.
No more than that. Absolutely not.
Okay, let's say 4, 2 from each chamber, with the resources of the
Ledge Council or JFO.
Ledge Council and JFO. And I would also recommend that we add, of the things that they're looking at, I would add another one, which another thing to look at, which Randy's identified, which are how other small states.
Basically, how other states are doing, with particular emphasis on small 4 states, on smaller states.
Yeah.
That basically, in terms of the things, if you take a look at, see what section do we have?
It's section 12. on page 39.
With that. One thing that concerned me about the way we have that worded is there's so much emphasis on the prior film commission, and I want less emphasis on that. It may be mentioned, but the emphasis is on
How
what,
do we invigorate it?
what are our opportunities to build a strong film industry that adds economically to the state and also effectively serves the population of the artistic community in Vermont who are involved in film and filmmaking. The goal here is to invigorate that industry so that Vermont has, it is feasible for Vermont to have an effective and productive and economically viable film industry on the one hand, and two, is to examine the desirability, the availability, the likelihood of increasing Vermont as a destination for filmmakers elsewhere to film in Vermont and to promote Vermont, and again, to tie that promotion both to economic development in terms of hiring people in Vermont who work in this area, also to bring revenue to Vermont, and also as a means to promote Vermont as a tourist destination by featuring in films made by people elsewhere.
So some of that's captured here, but I think the
But
additional.
that's the goal of this, it's twofold. As I say, there should be an emphasis in looking at what we have done before and what, why it was not as successful, and I don't know if you want to put it that way. But I don't want to spend a lot of time there. I want to look at what's the right model going forward and base it on the analysis that's done, the input of the people, and
The cost benefit
task force, the cost benefit analysis, and also the examples that we see from elsewhere. And I think a lot of time needs to be spent on
I think
what's working elsewhere.
the key thing that you're adding to this also is looking at how this, whatever we set up, can support the industry in the state, which the film commission before really didn't focus on at all. Really was focused on
Somewhere in this also, I think I don't know whether we have to mention it here, but my thought is we extent that we can tie this to use of COVID funds, because the film industry, just like the creative sector in general, it had a setback from COVID. And what we're doing is we're doing the resurgence of the film industry that we already have, and how we can make it stronger. That's the emphasis, because we need to be able to have the justification for our focus on use of federal funds.
So maybe how can we better support the film industry?
The
in Vermont as
recovery
well?
of the film industry in
Right.
Vermont.
We don't want to be in this study committee all year.
No,
It's a big topic.
Yeah, but, this has to be completed with a report back to the appropriate committees of jurisdiction, not later than, I almost, we say January 15, I almost would like to say December.
It's election year. We
Yeah, it's
need more
election
time in December. I'd encourage, remember our deadline for bills is later, because it's the first year of a biennium.
Yeah, that's true, we have a little bit more time.
The
But-
other key thing is to consult and use, sorry, David, I know, consult the stakeholders. We want to do this and be able to call the appropriate stakeholders, both as resources and as, working partners. Sorry.
It's election year, we're all gonna be unopposed anyway, right?
I already have a primary opponent. Yes, we do. For like 3 months.
We've already told everybody that, election day is in December of next year. So.
Okay.
David, is there anything else you need
No.
other than more time, more staff?
I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna move on to, I think there's one remaining issue before we get the charts.
Well, by the way, let me just interrupt one more thing that probably does need to be done by this, is that we're having legislative members and we're having meetings and so on. We ought to have some nominal appropriation to deal with that as we put it.
We have to have.
Jane will send it.
That more than the per diems you said?
Yeah.
So what are you suggesting? I haven't been.
Whatever we do, I mean, there's something I see, it seems to be pretty standard when we form a group like this, we have legislators on.
Well, I think Jane does that. I mean,
That's the per diems.
Yeah.
And you put that standard.
Yeah, now, I don't know whether there are any other expenses associated with it.
Sometimes there are expenses given to
no, we're.
non-governmental.
Yeah, I don't think we have any non-government people on this task force.
Well,
What
we have
about the
people-
art council?
The one thing that is the
Yeah.
cost driver is the number of meetings.
I shouldn't be, it should be a huge number,
Well,
So-
4.
4 to 6.
How about 4?
Can sound, sure.
That's short. What do you think? 6, we could put in 6 and they could up to 6.
Up to 6. That way, and we don't have to do that. I would hope it'd be less.
And we're winding him up and putting him in a pros to defend this one.
And, you know, the more you put people on, the more meetings you have, the more it's gonna be hard to defend this compared to some other things we're studying, like sports betting, paid leave, and.
Well,
Do 4 then.
Then
I think 4 would be.
Or up to 5. How about split the baby and do up to 5?
All right, fine.
The plus of this and sports betting is there's a huge amount of work that's being brought to the table here on both those pieces of work.
Yeah, a lot of work has been done in the past that we can bring in.
I think, you know, I'll just say this, I think you're better off with 4, because it's gonna
Okay.
draw less attention,
5,
and we can change it as we go forward.
Fine.
Let's get it off the
we can
ground.
appeal to Catherine and go down on
I think this would be a tough, you know, the appropriations, Becca's gonna have to carry the day, so. I don't think Jane is a good fit.
Actually, the Northeast Kingdom is one of our most beautiful locations to sell, so I would hope.
David, if you wanna, if we're gonna get this done by, you might wanna tire to your office and just listen in. I don't know that we're just talking about money from this point. So. One of your issues.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Okay, so let's talk about downtown organizations. Before we, is Joyce with us? Joyce here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, well, we're gonna get to you momentarily. We're gonna just talk about downtown. Then we'd like to see the charts of, you know, the things you see that we've talked about spending, what the governor wanted, and, you know, where we are.
67%.
So, downtown organizations, these are groups of people in 23 designated downtowns are required by law to exist with a designated downtown. They're very limited groups. I mean, I think the biggest one is the Church Street Marketplace, probably. And a few weeks ago, they wrote me, I don't know if they wrote the whole committee, but they said they wanted close to $500,000 to help support their efforts. You know, it came kind of late. They're small, probably essential groups, but I don't view this as a one-time expenditure, even though they're proposing one-time money. I don't know how you add a staff person to each one of these things or a half-time person to each one of these things, and then a year from now, you let them go. So I know there are advocates on this committee for this, and we've talked, and maybe we've come up with a solution, but I wanted to express my thoughts that it's not a new program, but it's a newly funded program for the state of Vermont for $500,000 that will be ongoing. And I just don't feel comfortable doing that with not that much information. But one way to do it is to say to ACCD that if they think this is a valuable enterprise, they can take it out of their budget and we can enable them to fund this. I had suggested the Better Places program as being one place. This new tourism ambassador, not tourism, retention and recruitment ambassador thing, which we'll talk about later, that Heather put forth, that could be another place. Maybe they can find it anywhere in your budget to do this, if these folks can make the case to Lindsay Curley and others that this is an important place to put money. So that's one way to sort of allow it to happen, but put it in the hands of people who may in some ways have to pay a price for making it happen, prioritize where it is on the pecking order. That's what I'm thinking of, how to deal with that. It's $485,000.
Right, it's 485, and I would argue, as you know, it's not a new program, it is supporting something that's required by law, but in fact, we do not support, the state does not support these designated downtown organizations. And the real reason to do this now is that we have given our regional planning commissions and our regional economic development commissions money to help be resources for all this ARPA money and all this development that we are driving into our downtowns. And this is just adding only $20,000 per, there are only 12 of these designated downtowns. This is adding a tiny amount of money, not a staff person. This is
23.
No, they're 12. Oh, no, they're 23 designated downtowns. You're right. I'm thinking 12 of the other things. There are 23. It's not much money for each of them, but it's an additional money for them to use to help enable the work they're being expected to be partners on with all this new housing, with all this new downtown development that we are driving here in policy through the ARPA money investments in our communities. So this is a tiny amount. It's actually, in terms of their budgets and in terms of the scale, it's a small amount of money to help them meet the demand we're placing on them, is I guess the way I'd put it. It helps them resource and meet the demand we're placing on them with many of the projects we are very excited about, which hinge on these 23 major designated downtowns.
And I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but you look at the Church Street Marketplace, I don't know anything really about where they get their money from, how much their staff is. Do they get staff that can do this downtown designation thing? Because the merchants on Church Street are more than happy to have this marketplace commission or whatever it is. I mean, we just don't know much about it. So this is a placeholder that keeps the thing alive. Further discussion in the House, maybe the case is better made.
Well, they can certainly flesh it out more fully, but I think if we charge ACCB for finding in their budgets.
That's not what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, that's what you're suggesting.
That's not what I'm suggesting.
No.
I'm suggesting that ACCD may use up to $485,000
Okay.
for, so they're gonna have to find it, but we're not telling them to find it. So
Okay.
we've done that in several places in this bill, where we enable, like we did in the housing bill.
Right.
On the workforce housing and the commercial thing, we said up to $5 million may be used for this, but it doesn't say that. It brings attention to it that we're interested in this, but it doesn't mandate.
And it does, for me, this calls the question for us next year to look at how we fund these 23 designated downtown organizations that we require but don't finance in any way. I mean, this will be the first state money that goes to them.
But do these organizations have other sources of?
Yes,
funding?
they all have to raise, each votes on its own bottom.
Do they do other things than just, shepherd the downtown designation? I mean, they promote downtown.
They do all those things. They work with all our housing partners. They work with.
I'm not saying it's not necessarily a bad idea. I think it's a new program. If we put it in as if we put it in as a new
It's a new
funding of
but not a new program.
of an existing responsibility, I don't think it's one time, and it may be very worthwhile.
Let's hope.
So-
We will hope to see the fruits of their labors.
So, Damien, you're here. I know this is not your section, but I think it would be, maybe David Hall's listening, maybe it would be a line item in the appropriation section that says, of within the FY 23 budget, ACCD may fund up to 485,000 for downtown organization. I don't know if you have a feeling on this one later. Okay.
You have one or two.
Yeah,
So no,
say, oh, it's one. It's another one.
How much? Huh?
Okay, how much?
485. And I would specifically, again, I would specifically highlight the two programs that are likely areas, Heather's new program and Better Places. Because Better Places, if you didn't put that in there as a possible source, I don't think ACCD would be allowed to look at that money. And I think what we did with Better Places with $5 million that hasn't been spent yet, and I think it's very similar in terms of the kinds of things these organizations do. So I don't want to create a new silo. That's one of the things.
Right.
I don't.
No, but I want to help resource
Okay.
the work we're asking him. So,
So if you can get something drafted on that, that would be great.
I'm sending it up to David.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so
So wait, do you want to include those two organizations in the language?
yes, if you could,
Okay,
but
so,
not, but included, not limited.
and they were Better Places.
Yeah, David will be able to cite the,
the thing Vermont, relocation,
it's in the,
marketing
it's in
and
the
tourism.
second section of this bill is relocation and recruitment money, you know, which we're gonna appropriate money for in this bill. So, for the first time, but it hasn't happened.
All right, I just sent it to David.
Okay, Joyce, let's go back and just see your revisions, and then we'll talk, and then you can pull up that chart you sent to me, at least, I guess, this morning or last night, in terms of where we are in spending. But if we can just go for the revisions on the paid leave first, based upon the 67%.
Yes, so my new estimate is 14.7 million based on the 67% and based on the maximum of a reimbursement of $25 per hour, which translates into what, $30 and something per hour in terms of the full hourly wage.
Sorry, how much was it again? How much?
It's 14.7 million, and that's based on 45% of cases seeking reimbursement, or their employers would seek reimbursement. And I'm using 45% with the understanding that you all want to put in some language about outreach to employers. So if that language goes in the bill, I'll stick with the 45%. If, is that probably going to happen?
We will do that, yeah.
Okay, all right, so let's stick with 14.7 million. And then you also wanted to, are we done with paid sick time?
No, I didn't understand where you jumped from $25 to $30 an hour.
So my understanding is that the maximum reimbursement to employers is $25 per hour. That's the way the language reads right now.
Right.
So if $25 is 67% of somebody's hourly wage, that hourly wage is, I actually have this, $37.31.
37, okay, got it, I got it. So Damien, I never fully understood the difference between gross and net pay. I mean, I do understand what the difference is, but how does that work in a program like this? What is the employer seeking reimbursement for? Exactly.
So the way this is worded is the employer is seeking reimbursement for their regular hourly wages. So gross compensation includes benefits. That's not what we're doing. We're doing the 67% of the regular hourly wage.
Right.
That means the employer is on the hook for the remaining 33%. Plus, the employer will have to pay regular payroll taxes and so forth as part of this. So this is just regular hourly wage.
How much do they have to pay? They don't have to pay, well, I don't know what they do with health insurance, people are out not paying that.
So
But other benefits.
the sick leave law provides that you continue paying for benefits when people are out on sick leave. So it's going to depend on the benefits package the employer has.
Right.
Some employees have benefits, some don't.
So there may be some other cost to the employer, like matching social security or Medicare.
Right, there could be retirement, sick leave, et cetera, and it's gonna vary greatly depending on the employer and their benefits package, and the benefits that the employees selected.
Okay, so for the employer that's already paid this stuff, they're still gonna look at this as something that they're gonna like to get back. But
Yeah.
for people who haven't paid it yet, they're gonna have to make a decision, it's voluntary, so they're gonna have to make a decision whether if all they're getting back is the hourly wage, if they have to match it in some degree, let's say it's a 10% match, they have to make the decision whether they want to do that.
It becomes a disincentive.
What's that?
It becomes a disincentive.
A little bit to taking it up, I don't know if we can do anything about that.
Well, so the way it's set up right now is it's based on wages to put people on basically, similar footing in terms of what they're compensating. You could say 67% of gross compensation, up to a max of $25 an hour. The issue there becomes, so you have an employee who's earning $35 an hour, plus an additional 30% in benefits. The employer is still going to be capping out at $25 an hour.
Yeah, we want to keep
so-
that, I think we want to keep that, but do we want to give them any more?
So it would only really provide additional incentive for employees who are earning a lower amount, but their gross compensation, so they're earning $30 an hour, but their gross compensation brings them up to 40, something like that. And then you'd have a little bit of an added incentive for those employers because they could potentially get a few dollars more per hour. But I can't speak to whether that's going to greatly sway the incentives or not. But if you do say hourly wages plus benefits, plus the employer's cost of benefits.
We're gonna do this, and I'm not opposed to it. I would just raise the $25 up a certain percentage and give more money, so people don't have to start distinguishing and figuring out the
More
benefits.
complicated you make it.
Right, so I would go like, maybe then go to 27.50, go up another 10% or something like that. And we have some extra money here because we were thinking we were doing 100%. And we could, we would say, our effort here was to address $25, but we realized we want to cover some benefits as well. And is that something you could write up?
Right, it's just a changing a number in the draft at this point. The bigger question for Joyce is how much does this affect the estimate?
I think we're going to be well within, because we were looking at 19 million at one point. Now we're down to 14 million. I want to put some money in for administration too. So how does that sound to you, Senator Clarkson?
Sounds good.
Add another 10% to the pay.
Okay, so up to $27.50 per hour for the max.
Right.
Okay, and
Instead of 25.
yep, and then I'll just need an estimate from Joyce so I can actually put in the appropriation for it. But yeah, I can do that.
So the only other thought I had, and I know it's been discussed, but I haven't. The other opportunity we have, and it may be too big. Maybe the adding in the sole props is just too much, right?
We've talked about it, yeah. I
It's
think,
just too
I
much. So
think,
I had thought, one other thought I had is that with this additional money, we could add sole props, but I don't know.
I talked to both Morgan and Jordan, and I just think it's very complicated to administer.
I agree.
And a solo prop they have so many different variables of how much they could have worked while they were home.
Yeah.
They're not subject to employment by a boss, and they're not necessarily having to come in. And-
Yeah, no, I realize, I just
But I mean,
wanted to.
and I also said that, and I'm being serious here, if the House wants to look deeper into this and could come up with a better mousetrap, we consider it may be at that point that it may be out of the hides of the regular employees, because it may be on a fixed dollar. If you want to add 20% more people or something like that, you know, it would cost the benefit. may
Yeah,
have to
no,
go down.
I just felt I had to
Yeah,
ask.
I actually, we actually talked about it. just-
Yeah, okay, good, I wasn't privy to that. So, given that, I'm comfortable moving to 27.5. And you, and
Joyce,
Keisha, is Keisha there?
Yeah,
okay,
How do you feel?
I appreciate all your passion and advocacy, Allison. I agree.
thank you. So let's get Joyce back and let's see, you know, where we are in spending. I know the last number may have varied a little bit, a couple of million maybe. We also want to put administrative dollars, outreach dollars into this program. I would say if we're going to be, let's say we're at, we went up maybe 10% on the cost, another $1.5 billion. So probably around 15.5. What if we put in no more than 5% for administration and outreach? And add that to the total and then say of that total, no more than 5%. We want them to do, we want to mandate the administration. We want to mandate the outreach, obviously. But I say up to 5% of the 16 million, so 800,000 or something. Up to.
So may I interject? Joyce Manchester, Joint Fiscal Office. So if I'm understanding the conversation correctly, the maximum that can be reimbursed is now $27.50, and that would include benefits. So
Well, we don't say anything about it, but you know, maybe on the floor, I would say, or someone would say, look, you know, we're at 25 and people raise the issue of benefits as added cost to employers. So we try to cover that with a 10% increase. And so we're raising it to 27.50.
Yeah, so it's 27.50, but it's 67% of their hourly wage. The increase to 27.50 is just to account that there are additional costs for employers.
That aren't normal.
But there's still 67% of regular hourly wage up to a maximum of 27.50 per hour.
okay, but I would say that benefits on average are about 20%. So that's based on the fact that a lot of people don't have benefits, but many people have benefits that are 40 and maybe 50% of their hourly wage these days.
Well,
Given,
we are trying to keep it simple, so we're not gonna.
I understand. No, I'm just trying to make it.
Individual, but if you're saying that maybe we should go higher, if the average is 20%, I'm comfortable at 27.50.
No, so that's fine. I'm just saying that the cost is going to go up. I'm getting 18.8 million for the program cost now because 18.8 million because I'm increasing the average hourly wage to $16 because of the increase to 27.50, and I'm including 20% for benefits on top of the regular cost.
No, Joyce, they're not reimbursing benefits.
Oh, they're not.
Yeah, they're just reimbursing regular hourly wage.
Okay. Sorry. Then it's just 16 on average that would be reimbursed per hour, according to my approximate calculations. So I'm at 15.7 million, maybe 15.7.
Okay, so let's raise that by 5% for administration and outreach. The committee agreed with that number, or do you want more?
Oh, good.
You could figure out what the dollar figure would be. I think it's a lot, you know, for this kind of program. You know, it's a one year program. So
16.5 million, Joyce. Is that what you're getting? You got 5% for administration.
Well, if I could do my spreadsheet properly, I could tell you exactly, but you're probably right.
Can I ask a question?
around.
So I guess, I mean, could the whole benefits conversation threw me a little bit until Damien said we're trying not to harm people's benefits. Is there a way to just say if you participate in this program, you can't cut people's benefits temporarily?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
I think we should do that. We had that in finance yesterday. I think
Okay.
Piggyback the language that's in finance for the proposed child care. Well, I don't know, this is replacement of income that they would have otherwise had. So
Right.
I'm sure that it's necessary.
Yeah, it's being treated as wages,
Right.
and it's subject, if it's leave for,
Right.
the employee's illness or something, it's already subject to the sick leave law, which says you can't discontinue benefits. And otherwise it'd be subject to the employer's leave policy, which,
I think she was talking about public assistance, weren't you?
Yeah. I mean,
And,
Oh.
and I'm not sure that it's analogous. I mean, in the child care credit was something that was new. And we didn't want it to be the, what is it called, the cliff, the benefit cliffs? And so that
Right.
went to that. And we could put that in here, but this is wages they normally would have had, even less. So I don't know whether they need that. It's not like an added benefit, it's just a replacement. They otherwise.
right. But maybe Damien's right about what I was trying to say. Okay.
yeah, I mean, I think this is a little bit different than some of the credits and the lump sum payments we've done in the past, where, like with hazard pay, it was an extra $1,200 or $2,000 that the employee was getting. And so there we included the hold harmless language for purposes of the benefit cliff, because that lump sum unexpectedly could put you over. In this case, this is basically wage replacement for leave that you didn't have, or it's reimbursement to the employer for sick leave that you already took. So it's a little bit different, because this is enabling employers to provide paid leave versus saying every employee is going to get a check for X amount. So I don't think we need the hold harmless language for the benefits cliff, because the considerations are the same that an employee would have if their annual wages are bringing them close about whether they want to, pick up more hours or not, versus sort of an unexpected bump from the earned income tax credit or a child care tax credit or hazard pay bonus or something like that. Does that make sense?
Senator Rob, are you okay with that? I think
Yes.
David's correct. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate the thought, but this is a different kind of animal. We need to prevent against benefit cliffs if there's unexpected increases in lump sums, but this is not that.
Right.
So, okay. So let's move on to Joyce. You could share a screen and show us paperwork you have maybe on spending so far and what the governor had suggested and what the appropriations committee had suggested we stay with it.
Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, but it's pretty small.
It's too small for our eyes.
Maybe Scott can help you expand it.
I'm gonna go upstairs to go do that.
We can print it out.
I can print it.
Ooh, Scott's gonna print it. That would be more helpful. quite
Okay,
frankly.
so I haven't sent you a document, Scott. Do you have, you can't print from here, right?
Thanks.
No, but if you send it to me, I can print it right away.
Okay.
Yeah, it might be good for you to stick around.
Okay, I'll just email them that.
Okay, it's on its way to you, Scott. So the bottom line is that if I'm looking at things properly, which is a big question mark, but I'm at 79.71 million coming from ARPA. And I believe that your box was 86 million, so you've got about 6 million to play with. And the governor had recommended 101.05 million. For the general fund, I'm at 15.2 million in H 159, and the governor had recommended 38.16 million.
Okay,
Now, I should say that includes, let's see, I've plugged in my new 16.5.
Yes, we're printing it right now. Hold on, Joyce. We're just
Okay,
putting it in front of our eyes.
let me explain what I understand, Joyce, and I think you understand it as well. The governor, in terms of his general fund one-time spending, he suggested $36 million. Appropriations has said
Oh, nice.
they only want us to spend $25 million. And we're at something like $15 million. But that's a false narrative because many of the things in the governor's budget are things, for general fund at least, are things that we never looked at that are in the area of workforce training and development. But the House, I'm sure, is going to have a lot of money that they want to spend out of that $25. So we have to share that $25 million with whatever the House comes up with. And I have no idea what they're thinking. And when I know that if we spend $15 million and there's only $25 million available, we're going to have to converse with the House as to how to divide up that fee. So I think on the general fund side, I think we should just stay where we are at 15 and not trying to do any more than that. Is that what you folks understand what I just said?
Okay, I'm just, or I have to be honest, I'm getting my sheet out that
Okay,
you and I
it's
talked
worth,
about.
it's worth saying again. The governor proposed $36 million worth of one-time appropriations out of general fund. But more than half of those were workforce training and capacity and development things,
Right.
which we haven't looked at all.
Right, we're
And
back.
the House is going to send us a bill,
Mhm.
but I don't know what's in it, and I don't know how much money they're spending. So we've got to assume that they're going to want to spend some money too within the $25 million that the appropriations committee says we have. So we have $15 million, I think it's mostly brownfields, remote relocated worker program, and the third is the tourism, Heather Pelham new program.
The relocation, tourism relocation program.
Not tourism, it's not tourism. So that's 3 items. I say we just go, we're gonna have to talk about the tourism one, because I want to
Right.
reduce that some, but no, it's not tourism, that's what
It's
it's not.
relocation program.
It's
It's
not
for marketing.
Regional
Economic-
development and relocation.
Right, and it's economic development.
Right.
So those 3 items are things that I think we should fund, and we should stay around $15 million on that. So it's not like if we suggest $15 million and the governor and Jane Kitchell says we have 25, then we should be looking to spend more, because we have to anticipate that the House is going to send us a bunch of stuff that they want.
Right, we're at 17 here for that.
Are we?
Yes.
Okay.
Because here's your marketing
Oh, yeah,
here.
but I
let's say.
did my memo last night.
Oh,
I had a suggestion to have.
gosh, okay, I didn't see that. Okay, I mean, I saw the memo. but
Let's
hold that.
talk about the marketing piece. I wrote this to folks last night.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up your email.
This is a new program. I finally understood it. It's a new program to do 2 things: promote economic development and retention and relocation of workers through promotional efforts and hand ambassadors to do one-on-one in the 12 regions. And it's for 3 years. It was at 3.9 million for 3 years, about 1.3 million a year. The part of it that was the ambassador part, where they were going to subcontract out to 12 regional areas, was at $1.3 million. I think that's high from what we've heard. I mean, I just, if we funded, I don't know how they're going to do it, but if we funded a half-time person in each of the 12 regions, that's a lot for a new program to work one-on-one with people in their areas to retain some people. So I suggested we do a half-time person in each region, which would be $50,000 times 12 or $600,000. And both for this and the marketing piece, which is another $4.5 million, I said, let's just do it for 2 years. They want to do it for 3 years. It's sort of a pilot. Let's revisit it after 2 years and see how they're doing. This is a brand new program with a significant price tag. So I'm not saying on an annual basis we give them less, but we just do it for 2 years at this point, as opposed to 3 years and come back in 2 years. So the 4.5 for promotion, advertising, and marketing of economic development and people, that 4.5 will be cut by a third, because 2 years versus 3 years. We do it for FY23 and FY24. That brings that price tag down to 3. And if you do 2 years versus 3 years on the ambassador part, that piece would be 1.2 million for a total of 4.2 million. And that brings the price tag down for the 3 things we want to fund out of general fund to around 15 million, which is more than half of the 25 we have to share with the House. So,
This is all general fund money.
all general fund.
The brownfields has to be general fund money.
And and we do have a list of what the governor proposed on if you want to see it, on the workforce development. There's about 10 different programs he has, like $1 million here, $1 million here. I have a feeling the House is going to accept a lot of those. And we're going to be at probably up in the 30s, and we only have 25 million to spend. So I don't want to spend every dollar.
Okay, trying to find your note on the. Okay, so we're, the total for 2 years, you're talking about just for 2 years, and the total on that is 4.
Is 4.2, 3 million for marketing, and 1.2 for the ambassadors. Okay, let's move over to the ARPA funding.
Okay, so that, let me just clarify, so that's 5 million for relocated worker program, 4.2 for economic development, marketing, and ambassadors, and 6 million for brownfields.
Right.
What was the relocated worker number again?
5.
There's 1 billion in the base, that's not an issue here. There's $5 million at one time to join.
And then the program with relocated worker,
Heather
Heather
is
will do is
4.2 total.
For 2 years, so it's not totally total.
And
6 for brownfields.
I'm very confused. I don't know who could tell us between the 6 and the 5. Actually. Isn't the number in our bill, is it 6? Well, 6 in our bill.
It's been from the money that James, the James
Right,
thing.
so it's 6, yeah.
I got
Yeah.
a hard stop.
All right, so we're not going to vote this bill, obviously, today, because we need a clean rewrite. But let's at least look at, we'll get you out a little early. Let's put that, we have this in front of us, and let's just focus on the 79.71, which is less than the 86 that, and we could spend some more on that in this area. Part of the reason why we're below is because the original estimate for Joyce was higher on COVID wage replacement, because we went from 100% to 67%. Just looking at, we do to have some money we need to spend on the sports betting, that's minor. I don't know anything about, we haven't talked about it, it's not in this thing, this funding of the resource, the natural resources board. But, we can't do that, yeah, we haven't looked at that. So we could bump up the capital investment program.
Well, we have at 485 for the downtowns.
It's not in there.
Oh, right, got it.
It will be, it should be in here, but it won't be an ad.
Got it.
Uh,
So we have,
I would be comfortable in passing out, being under the figure and continue to think about it, but not just an effort to get the bill
so
out, but.
can I just clarify, you've got, I'm just trying to sync up these. I thought we were at 30, okay, right, we're 35, 8 for UI. And now we're at wage replacement at 16.5 million, is that right?
Is it nothing for sports betting?
No.
Well, there will be, I guess she's just gonna have, but it's basically per diems.
Yeah.
So, and Joyce, thank you for the PMFML task force actuarial work. And she put in 3.6K for the health commission.
4 meetings, 4 legislators.
Just wondering.
And that is. Okay. So in addition, we have the general fund one-time asks, which are the 15.2.
Yeah, I think we're good there. We could spend 7 more or 6 more million on recovery support.
Or, yeah, on recovery. So I would put more into the capital investment because it's now a wider range of business. It's small, we could put more in, put more towards the CIP.
That's the logical place.
I think that's the logical place, given how many people that is and the range of business and the scale of business that is now looking at. So I'd put 40 into that.
All right, let's do 40 into that and stop there, okay? We're very close, we're at 84.9 or something versus 86. Close enough. So thank you, committee. I'll get this all cleaned up, get it out to you tonight.
Okay.
And we'll vote on it. We have 1 hour tomorrow. We can do as much discussion as we want in that hour. I could talk to the pro tem about doing it a day later, and she's okay with that. So remember, this is a House bill, so there's no time pressure technically on us or on the money committees at this point.
Okay.
They probably won't deal with it until certainly next week, even if we vote it out tomorrow. Damien, thank you.
You're welcome. See you tomorrow.
Thank you. And are we, Damien, what's your expectation on our having a draft to look at, like later tonight or tomorrow morning?
I'm sure you'll be able to have one later today. I don't think there are too many changes, but I don't want to speak for David. I know for me, it's just a couple of minor things, but David's still working on some other things.
Okay. You got the message to him, right?
I
Yes,
did.
you did.
And you want me to tell him that capital investment program's up to 40 million, or do you want to email him directly?
Yes, no, that would be great.
Okay, I'll send him that email.
You are divine.